Do you have what it takes to become the Microsoft Excel World Champion? Let's find out. Last month, I spoke at the Active Excel Conference in Las Vegas, a 3-day event that gathered the top Excel professionals across the world for the Microsoft Excel World Championships. The finals were thrilling, with Michael Jarman coming out on top on an epic World of Warcraft case. So let's take a look at the case and see if we can match his score of 905 points. Now, Excel esports cases are broken down into a series of levels, each one more difficult than the last, with a question that you have to answer for each. And the trick is to build a solution that applies across all the scenarios in each level, thus scoring all the points for that level. Now, some levels also have related bonus questions, which allow you to score more points. In the end, the player with the most points after 30 minutes wins. So let's get started. With level 1 here. So in World of Warcraft, players start their journey at experience level 1 with 0 experience points, and they need to gather 400 XP to go from experience level 1 to experience level 2. Then each subsequent experience level requires 12.5% more XP. For example, it requires an additional 450 XP to go from experience level 2 to 3, and so on and so forth. Now, right now, it looks like each of these 20 players has accumulated these many XP. So what we need to do is use this logic to calculate their current experience level. And you'll see that we are handed an example here. So for this example player right now, with 908 XP, they are currently at experience level 3. So let's start by building a table with the XP required to reach each level. So I'm going to add a new tab here. Let's call this XP. It's related to level 1. And give it that same orange background as well. And let's say experience level. Not sure how many we're going to need. I'm just going to go up to 200 just in case. So let's do sequence 200. I'm going to Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste the values. And then we'll say additional XP required. We know that it's 400 for level 2, and then 12.5% more for each subsequent level. So let's just grab that times 112.5%, so that we're already adding the previous value. We knew it was 450, then 506.25, etc., etc. So the XP required for each new level is going to be that plus that. So we need 400 to reach level 2, 850 to reach level 3, etc., etc. Now what I'm actually going to do is turn this into a table as a best practice. So Control-T, press OK, and let's call this table XP. And what that's going to do is allow us to access these columns in this table a lot easier. I'm going to go back to our case. And now what we need to do is look up the XP for each player and find out what experience level they're from. So if they have 6,900 points, go to XP. It looks like 6,900. We won't exactly find that value, but it looks like they'll have reached level 10. They're not quite up to level 11 yet. So it's important to keep in mind that we won't find exact matches, because when we look up, we're going to need an approximate match. So we want to look up this value, and we can simply use the table structure here. So from the XP required, that's where we're going to look it up. And we want to return the experience level. And if we go over to the match mode, we want an exact match or the next smaller item. Close that out, press enter, we get 10. You'll see that Copilot got in the way a little bit there, but we do have the correct answer. As we apply this down, it looks like level 1 is complete, and now we have 140 points, which means that we can now tackle bonus question number 1, which is how many experience points does a player need to gather in order to obtain experience level 40, rounded up to the closest integer. Simple enough. We want to XLOOKUP 40 in XP, experience level, return XP, XP required. Close that out. We'll want to round up to the nearest integer. And there we go. So now we're up to 240 points. Let's move on to level 2. So the goal on level 2 is to level up all of our characters up to experience level 40. So on the Quests L2 tab, we'll find a list of quests right over here, and each quest will grant a different amount of XP and some gold. Now there's some money rules that we can ignore for now, but it's important to know that each player will start to complete quests sequentially based on their current location. And as they complete all the quests in that location, they move on to the next one based on their race. And you can see that this is the order that they'll follow. So if they're an orc, they'll go from Durotar to the Barrens, Ashenvale, etc., etc. And you'll see that of the 20 players, we have their races right over here. So each player will continue to complete these quests and switching locations as needed until they reach experience level 40, when they will stop immediately. And the question for the level is, how much money do your characters have as they get to experience level 40? Well, if we go over to the quests tab, the first thing we need to do is create an expanded list of these quests where they are actually sorted by location for each of the different races. So once again, I'm going to Control T to turn these into tables. Call this one quests. And if we go back to our case, we can call these Control T. We can call these location order. So I'm actually going to take care of this in Power Query. Let me go to data and then get data from table or range. All right, it looks like we have our location order data. I also want to bring in the quests. So what I'm actually going to do is just duplicate this query. And here in the source, let's change the name of the source to the quests table. Press enter. There we go. Let's call this quests. And I'm going to go back to the location order and apply some quick transformations. I actually want to unpivot all of these columns. So with this one selected, I'm going to go to transform and then unpivot other columns. I'm going to call this race. This is the location. And what we want to do is bring in the different quests for each location by merging both of these queries. So I'm going to go to home, merge queries as new. We want to merge this with the quest table based on location. Now you'll see that it's only matching 23 of 24 rows, and that's because we have an NA for location 6 here, or rather for the undead race, they don't have a 6th location. So what we can do to delete that in one swoop is actually just do an inner join. Only matching rows, 23 from the first, all from the second. Press OK. Let's call this quest full. And what we can do is just expand these. We don't need the location or the original column name as prefix. Press OK. And there we go. So what I'm going to do now is actually go to close and load 2. And I'm only going to create a connection for these. Press OK. Because I only really want to bring in a table for my quests full query. So let me go to my quests tab. And for quests full, let's go to edit the load to. I want to load it as a table. Let's do it right here. Press OK. And there we go. So now we can actually sort this by location and race. So if you're an orc, you start in Durotar and complete the quests in this order. Then you go to the Barrens, then Ashenvale, etc., etc. And the same for all of the other races. So now that that's set, it should be quite simple to answer our question. The first of which is, how many missions will each player complete until they reach experience level 40? So to do that, let me give myself some space here. Open this up. I'm going to start writing a let function. The Alt-Enter to give myself some space. And let's start by filtering the quests based on the class, or the race, for each of these players. So let's do Q for quests. And we're going to filter our quests full table whenever quests full race is equal to this race right here. Close that out. Let's return Q. And it looks like we have a spill error. Might need to move this a little bit to the right. There we go. So let me make this smaller. And I'm actually going to copy and paste the headers here so we know what we're looking at. Control-Shift-V to paste values. So these are the missions that an orc is going to complete, and in this order. So now we need to calculate the running total of XP that they'll start to accumulate as they complete each mission. And we're actually going to start with however many XP they have already. In this case, it's 908. And then we'll just do this plus that and start applying this down. Now, right now I'm using this helper column over here, but I want to solve the entire thing in a single formula. So a way to do something like this, where you're doing these cumulative or these running calculations, is to use Excel's new scan function. I'm going to copy and paste these as values just to have them there as placeholders. And let's see if we can get the same result by using scan. So our new variable, let's call it x for xp. And we want to scan through these xp values. Our initial value is going to be this 908 here, which is this player's xp. The array of values that we want to scan through is this column over here for xp. And the way to do that, we can just index all of q, keep all of the rows, so we can just comma over, and then just return the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column over. So starting with this initial value, we're going to scan through all of these XPs, and we're going to do a cumulative sum. Close that out, return X, and as you can see, we have the same exact results here. So let me just delete this. Let's go back to our let function. Now this is the XP that they've accumulated, but what we want to know is the experience level that they will have reached based on the XP. So now let's do L for level, and we know that we can just look it up, right? Let's look up X in XP, XP required, and return XP experience level using an exact match or the next smaller item. Let's return L. And it looks like by this point over here, they will have reached level 40. So to count how many lessons it took, we can just count all the missions they took before reaching level 40, which should be 55, and then add 1. So let's go back here. M for number of missions. Let's filter L whenever L is less than 40. Let's count the number of rows, or in this case, a number of numbers. Add 1 and return M. We have 56 missions that they completed, which is great, but what we want to answer is how much gold do they have as they reach experience level 40, or rather how much silver. So we know that they're accumulating gold with each mission. So what we can do, remember that Q is still our original table for this player's quests. So what we can do is just sum the gold for the first M number of missions. So for gold, let's do take from the 7th column, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, so let's index Q, all the rows, 7th column. Let's take the M number of rows from the top. Close that out. We can sum all of this. That's going to be the sum of the gold. And we also want to tack on however much gold they have collected up until this point. So that's the gold. Let's return the gold. We get 5725. If we compare it with this is 5725 without the decimal, and that's because this is gold. This over here is silver. We want to provide the answer in silver coins. 1 gold is equal to 100 silver. So what we can do, just multiply this times 100. And now let's just Control A, copy our formula, paste it over here. Let's just drop these references and see if this is right. Looks like it is. Let's apply it down. And that is level 2 complete. We can get rid of these. Retract this. And now we're up to 400 points. So let's move on to level 3. And I have to warn you, this is a tricky one, so don't worry if you struggle a bit more to follow along. To be fair, level 2 was quite advanced already. Now, before we start, what we actually want to do is grab these stats from level 2 because we're going to need them. So we know the gold collected is equal to our answers. And know that the players are always going to be in the same order, so we can just reference this, divide by 100, apply it down. Let's just use this formatting. And for the XP, we're actually going to have to borrow this formula. So let me Control A, Control C, paste it down here. And instead of summing the gold here, let's just sum the XP. So gold was in the 7th column over. I think XP was in the 6th column over. And instead of adding K122, which was a previous amount of gold, we want the previous amount of XP. We definitely don't want to multiply by 100. All right, let's apply this down. And if we want to double check, we just copy, paste it here, and you'll see that we get the same result as the example. So we should be good to go. And we are ready to start level 3. Now the goal here is to buy a mount that costs 90 gold. Now we know that we already have some gold from the previous missions, but now we're going to have to mine some of these minerals to get the rest of the gold we need. So for each of the 20 players, we're going to start mining at a designated date, mine for a week, sell the ore, and then repeat until you get the 90 units of gold. And if we go down here, you'll see the date that they'll start mining, how much they'll mine, and then the color represents the material that they'll be mining during that week. Now after you mine the ore, you'll then have to sell it in stacks with a stack containing 20 units of ore. So these are units. Now the ore is sold on the final day of the week that it is mined, and any remaining surplus units of ore that weren't able to fit into stacks are carried forward, and the prices or the sale prices for each date are provided in this ore prices tab. Finally, you need to stop mining after the exact number of weeks that you get the required amount of gold that you need to buy your mount. So it's a lot to digest, but I'm going to try to break this down piece by piece. Now, the first challenge here is that the background color of these numbers indicates what mineral they are. Now, I personally don't know of any Excel function that can take the background color into consideration, although I do remember seeing custom functions being used during the World Championship Finals. My guess is that they used custom VBA, but I really have no idea how they did it. So here's my workaround. I'm going to create another copy of this table. Just select all of this, Control C. I'm going to copy over here with the same formatting and the same column widths. And I'm going to replace the numbers here. Let me actually erase them so it's a little bit cleaner, with the actual name of the mineral that they represent. So now that that's done, what I want to do is actually break each one of these rows, or actually we can start with the example, down into a matrix where I separate the minerals by row. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is start a let function, give ourselves some space here. I'm going to call this first variable mine since it's what we're going to be mining. And what I'm going to do is multiply the units that we're mining by an array constant of ones. And this is going to be a single column of 5 ones. And if I do that, let's return mine, you'll see I get a 5 by 5 array of these numbers, and we have 5 different rows because we have 5 different minerals. So what I want to do for each row is only display the number of units being mined. If in this first row, the mineral being mined is copper, in the second row if it's tin, etc., etc., etc. So to do that, I'm going to create another matrix, call it resource. And similarly, I'm going to compare these minerals being mined to these minerals over here, but I'm going to transpose these because I want these as the different rows. So I'm going to make a column of these. If I do that, let's return resource, press enter. You'll see that we get true, true, false, 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 because these first two are copper, which is our first row. Then we get false, 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 false. We're not mining any tin. Then we get falses, true, false, because we're mining iron. And then we're getting 2 trues here because these are thorium, which is the last mineral in this list. So now check it out. If I multiply mine times resource, then we get that matrix that I was looking for initially. So that's a good first step, but we still have a long way to go. So this is how many ores or units of ore we're mining for each mineral. Next, let's see how much is going to be remaining after we convert those ores into stacks. To do that, we can actually use the mod function. These are the numbers. The divisor is going to be 20 because 20 units make up a stack. So you'll see that we have 19 units of copper left over from this first one, which we can then add to this one and then divide by 20 and see if we can make up more stacks. So to do that, let me actually just drag this over to the right. Let's fill this with zeros, since that's going to be what was remaining in the beginning. We didn't have any units to begin with. So if we do something like this plus that, and then divide by 20, we should get the number of stacks that we're able to sell that week. We can actually round those down. 0. Oops. There we go. Apply this 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the 5 weeks. And then we can do the same for the rest of these minerals. So let's see if we can combine all of these steps into a single function. I'm actually going to copy this one, start it up here, press enter. Let's copy our last formula that we used over here to calculate these stacks. All right, here, let's say stacks, paste that in. And again, because we were applying it over to the right and referencing the previous cells here, we can use scan once again. So I'm actually going to write scan inside here of my round down function. So scan, the initial value is this 0 over here. The array of values that we're using is this array here, which as we know is mine times resource. And we don't just want to sum, so we're not going to use one of the eta lambdas that we have pre-written here. We're going to write our own lambda. And whenever you use lambda within scan, you want to have a variable for the previous and the current value. And we actually already have those populated right here. So this green reference is the current value. So let's just swap that in with a C. And this green reference is the previous value, but it's being calculated using a mod function. Let's replace this with mod. The number is the previous value. The divisor is 20. Close out our mod function. Close out our lambda function. I think this already closed down scan. And we close down round down. So let's see what we get here with these stacks. Press enter. And let's compare. So we have the correct results for the first row, 49 and 18. But then we have one extra one down here. And we have one extra one down here. And the problem is that as this scans, it's not just scanning for this row. It's actually going in snake-like fashion. So it's accumulating the copper that we had left over from this stack, and it's adding it to whatever this is right here. I think it's iron. So we don't want that. We want to do this by row. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I tried using by row here to accomplish just that, but I was never able to get it to work. So if anyone knows how to solve this by using by row and not the workaround that I'm about to use, then by all means, please let me know. What I'm actually going to do is use VSTACK here. And we're just going to have to break this down into 5 different parts, one for each row. So VSTACK, let me open that up. I'm actually going to give myself some space here. Let's bring this down here. So for this first row, we're going to scan through this mine times resource array, but only through the first row. So I'm going to index the first row in, and then I'm going to repeat this 5 times. So let me just copy this. So that's 1, Control V, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let me just do 2, 3, 4, 5. So now what we can do is close this VSTACK, press enter, and now we have the same result. So 49, 18. We still have just the 29, the 10, and the 6. So we can get rid of all of these helper functions. We're getting the result that we want in a single formula, at least so far. Now we just need to collapse this back into a single row. To do that, we can actually use BYCOL. At the end of this BYCOL, we just want to sum. So for each column, we want to sum all of these and return a single row. Press enter, and there we go. So these are the stacks that we're going to be selling for each mineral each week. Let me give myself some space here. Let me drag this down and move this down. Now what we need to figure out is how much we sold each of these for. To do that, we need to look up the prices in the ore prices tab. Let me actually turn this into a table. Call this ore prices. Go back here. So for the price, we're going to want to index the ore prices table. For the row number, we need to match the sale date. So let's do match. And we need to match the sale date for each week. So we know we're selling at the end of the week. So it needs to be the start date plus. And for the first week, it's going to be this plus 6. For the second week, it's going to be this plus 13. Etc., etc. So what we can do is actually write a sequence, no rows. We want 5 columns because it's 5 weeks. We want to start with 6 because that's how many days we need to add in the first week to get to the end of the week. And then we want a step of 7. So we want to match those sale dates with the ore prices date column. We want an exact match. And then the column number, well, we need to match the mineral, which is this over here. So each one of these minerals with, let's go over to our ore prices, the appropriate column over here. Again, exact match, close our match function, close our index function, Alt Enter, return the price. And let's see where the error is. Need to comma over. And there we go. So if this start date is January 1st, that means we're selling on the 7th. We're selling copper. So let's see if the price is 0.22. Copper on the 7th, 0.22. So that's working. We have the prices. Now let's just multiply them by the number of stacks. So the sale is going to be equal to stacks times price. See what we get. All right. So that's how much gold we're getting each week. Now let's just accumulate that. We know how to do that. Gold, you can just use scan. Our initial value is how many gold we've already collected. The array is going to be the sale, and we just want to sum it. Return the gold. So after the first week, we'll have 68, then 71, 86, and 111 by the 4th. Now we could keep mining, but remember we need to stop once we reach that 90 mark, or we pass the 90 mark, which means that we're able to buy the mount. So let's filter this array. So gold, whenever gold is greater than or equal to 90, which means we've reached our goal, close that out. We can take the first column, since that's the gold we'll have reached in the first week in which we passed the 90. Close that out. That's the 111. Let's subtract the 90 that the amount is going to cost us. So that's how much gold we'll have left over. 2169. Again, we need it in silver. So let's just multiply all of this by 100. If we want, we can go ahead and call this silver. Return silver. And 2169. Now, before I apply this anywhere, let me just check my reference types. So we're referencing this. That's always going to live there. Let's fix that. These we don't need to fix. Those are going to move down. These resources are going to move down as well. I think I only really need to fix that. So I think if I apply this down a couple times, let's see if this is correct. Looks like it's wrong. Let's double check our answers here. So it looks like it is 745. I don't see it stated anywhere that we need to round. Let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it here, expand, and let's just round this 0 decimal places. Whoops, I think it removed the parentheses here. There we go. Now it's correct. All right, let's see if we can apply this down. And we're getting an error here. Looks like I didn't copy over the material. This is thorium. And there we go. So that is level number 3, which to me was one of the most difficult in the entire case. But we've got our score up to 580. And with that completed, we can actually do bonus number 2. So on the quest tab, how many letter W's are there in the quest's name? Consider both uppercase and lowercase. This one is actually relatively simple compared to everything we've done. So let me just do that in a single swoop and see if you can follow along here. So let me just do let's go over to our quests. Oops. All right, let's say let. And I'm just going to start with the entire text. So we're probably going to want to join all the quest names. So let's say text join. Don't really need any delimiter. Join all the quest names. Close that out. Probably want to do a lower here, so we take care of the lowercase uppercase problem. Close that out. Next, we're going to want to explode all of the different letters. So let's call this L for letters. To do that, it's actually quite simple. You can use mid, and then the text is going to be T. The start number is going to vary. We want the sequence of characters. So first we want the first one, then the second one, etc. So we can use sequence. The number of rows in the sequence is going to be equal to the length of our text string. close out our sequence function, and then we want one character because we want single letters. After that, if we want the double use, well, we can just filter the letters whenever the letter is equal to W. And then finally, we can just count a W. Close that out, press enter, and of course I made a mistake. We need an ignore empty argument over here. Press enter, and there we go. So there's 45 W's in the quest names. So that is bonus number 2. We're up to 705 points now. I don't know where that would rank us, but remember, we're after the 905, which would get us at least tied in first place. So let's move on to the next level, level number 4. I will say I didn't find it as challenging as level number 3, but let's take a look. Now, if I scroll down, you'll see that, as always, we need to grab these stats from the previous level. So we'll want the XP. I don't know if we have that calculated anywhere. I think it's the same one. Yep. So let's just say equals to this over here. And the gold that was left over, well, it's the silver that we calculated, divided by 100. Apply this formatting, apply it down, and we are good to get started. So, your character has reached level 40 and needs to gear up with items to meet specific game stat requirements. Now, each class of characters has specific stat requirements to meet. These are shown here in this table, and this is done by completing more quests and getting equipment items. You can see that the more quests and the items are over here. Now, at the start, we all have 0 for the game stats, and the objective is to acquire the necessary equipment by completing quests to boost the required stat and get to the target. Naturally, though, each quest grants XP and gold, so we'll want to keep track of those for future levels. Now, as for the rules, we'll want to start with the available quest. That gives an item that brings the highest amount of the desired stat for the player. In case of 2 quests bringing the same amount of the desired stat, well, we need to start with a quest that gives the higher XP. And like is custom now, we want to stop as soon as we've reached the required stat target. So let's take a look at this tab. You'll see that we have 2 different tables. We have quests and we have items. And this is the item granted by quest. And then this is more information on each item. So let's start by converting these into tables like always. Call this quests. And we already have that because this is more quests, of course. And this is going to be items. Now, once again, I'm going to bring both of these into Power Query. So data from table range. Again, let's duplicate this. And for this one, we want items. This is items. And what we want to do is just merge them. So from the more quests, let's merge queries as new. Join with items based on the item granted and the item name. Press OK. Call this quest items. And then we can just expand these, and we don't need to repeat the item name. We actually don't need the slot. It's given in the instructions. We can leave it, and we don't need the prefix. And finally, in the available to class column, you'll see that we have them separated by commas. I'm actually just going to split these up into rows. It's going to make my filtering more intuitive. So again, transform, split by delimiter. Let's use comma space, split into rows, and there we go. So again, home, close and load to, only create connection. And then for quest items, let's load to a table right over here. That's okay. All right, so this should make our lives easier. Let's go back to the case and think about the logic here. All right, a let function. I'm actually going to start by saving the player's class and then their required game stat and target as variables, just because we're going to be reusing those. So the class is going to be Warlock in this case. The stat is going to be based on this class, but I haven't turned this into a table, so let me just do class right here. Get out of that, Control T. call this, stat targets. Now we can go back here. Stat is going to be XLOOKUP. We want to look up the class over here and return the stat. And then the target is going to be pretty much the same thing. Call this target. And we want to return the target. Let's do a quick check. We'll do stat intellect target 80 for a warlock, intellect 80. All right. So now let's filter the quests by those available to this class. Let's call this quests. I'm going to filter our quest items table. Whenever quest items available to class equal to class. Close filter, return quests. And it looks like, yep, these are all warlock. Now these also all happen to give items that give us the intellect stat, but we don't know that for sure. So let's just add that to our filter criteria. So we want it to be available to our class, and for the quest items stat to be equal to the stat we're after. Close that out. I have a parentheses error here. All right. There we go. So those are the quests that are available to us. Now let's see the order that we're going to complete them in. So if we go back here, we'll want to start with the one that gives us the highest amount of the desired stat. And if two have the same amount, then start with the one with the highest XP. So let's do quest order, and we'll just sort quests. And we'll want to sort by two columns first, by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I believe, which is the stat that we get for each item. And after that, based on the XP that we get, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the sort order is going to be descending for both. Close that out. Let's do quest order. Yep, so sorted by these descending, and whenever there's ties, it's sorted by XP. All right, so that's the order. Now we need to start accumulating these stats to see when we reach the target. And by this point, you should know that we can use scan. Now it's mentioned that we start with 0 stats at the beginning. We want to scan through this column of quests order. So index quest order, all the rows, and the column is 10. And we want to sum. So now let's do stats. And it looks like we will have reached the target of 80 by this point over here, which means we'll have completed 4 quests. So let's calculate that. Quests completed. We can filter stats. Remember, stats is less than the target. Count how many lessons that is. How many missions, sorry. And then we'll want to add 1 because after that we will have reached the target. So again, quests completed. We get 4. So we're going to complete 4 quests, but the question is how much XP will each player have after reaching that target or completing these missions? Well, let's take a look at our quest order once again. Oops. Well, we'll just want to sum the XP for the completed missions. So we'll do XP. Let's grab the XP column. So index, the array is quest order, all the rows, and I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th column. From this column, we want to take the number of rows that is equal to the number of missions we completed. So it's completed. Close that out, and once we take those, we want to sum them. That's the XP that we accumulated, plus whatever we already had, which should be this right here. All right, let's return the XP. 336, 368, 336, 368 again, applied down to. Looks good, so let's copy the formula, paste it here, apply it down, and watch the magic happen. So now, as we delete these, let's move up, and we finally have all 905 points. 4 levels complete and 2 bonus questions. And there you have it, a competitive Excel amateur's approach to solving the World Championship Finals case. Now, if you're interested in building your own Excel foundation or upskilling to advanced topics like these, check out our Excel Specialist Path or any of our self-paced courses and guided projects. Just head to mavenanalytics.io and create your personalized learning plan for free. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure to like and subscribe for more data content just like this. See you in the next one.